How one touching moment at my brother's wedding inspired 50 guests to walk out together. Jake adjusted his tie in the mirror, a sense of unease twisting in his stomach. Beneath the polished exterior, turmoil churned. He was the eldest son, a nurse in a small town, who had put aside his own ambitions for the sake of his family. Today, he attended his younger brother's wedding, an affair that should radiate joy, but instead, he felt the weight of his parents' expectations pressing down like an anchor. They always relied on him, and now, a dream long deferred, a nurse practitioner program, felt like a distant star, flickering out of reach. As he made his way downstairs, flashes of emotion clawed at him. Would his father be there? After abandoning their family when Jake was just a teenager, the thought included bitterness that had never subsided. Jake could hear the laughter of guests, the clinking of glasses, but inside he was a paradox, longing for a festive atmosphere while grappling with unresolved hurt. His heart raced with every step, recalling all the sacrifices he had made. Now, at this pivotal family event, would he have to confront the man who had left them abandoned and broken? "Jake, you look sharp," his mother grinned, the kind of overbearing smile that instantly made him restless. He forced a smile back, but inside, anguish churned. He wasn't just attending a wedding, he was stepping into a pivotal moment, one where he might have to reconcile the past. As the ceremony commenced, the ambiance glistened with sparkles of affection and hope. But then he saw him. At the back of the room stood his father, awkward, a shadow among the sea of faces, unwanted and uninvited. The sight ignited a whirlwind of rage and sorrow. How could he enjoy the celebration when the man responsible for their family's fracture intruded upon it? The couple exchanged vows, each promise bright and binding, leaving Jake feeling even more crushed. Each word resonated deeply, highlighting the cracks in his own family. He swallowed hard, his throat tight, clenched fists released a tremor of frustration. Would he have the courage to voice his pain today, a day meant for bliss? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. In a split second, he was called to give a speech. Standing there, the weight of generations bore down on him. He hesitated, scanning the crowd for familiar faces. His brother's gleaming smile, his mother's proud gaze, but his eyes kept drifting. Back to his father's shadowy figure. He exhaled deeply. Was he ready to confront the elephant in the room? To share his own sacrifices, wrapped in love for his brother, while exposing the scars of their family history? "Family means everything to me," Jake began, but the words twisted in his throat. Anguish surged as he found his gaze locked onto his father's, an emotional standoff brewing between them. The room was silent, anticipating a moment that could compel Jake's father to speak or leave. Everything felt fragile, like glass on the verge of shattering. His heart racing, breaths growing shallow. In that moment of vulnerability, Jake didn't just confront his own journey. He ignited something in the crowd, a reflection of their own struggles. In that stifling silence, with his father hovering on the brink of departure, Jake stood torn, grappling with the choice to chase after answers or prioritize his own future. Would this day mark a turning point towards healing, or would it seize him in a haunting limbo, leaving him distant from both reconciliation and his dreams? The tension thickened, leaving Jake at the epicenter of a storm he was desperate to contain. Jake's voice trembled, words threatening to escape him as he battled the swirling tempest of emotions within. Each syllable felt heavy, a physical weight that tethered him to the moment. "Family means everything to me." The uncertainty lingered, and he sensed the crowd leaning in, eager for a revelation that might never come. With his father's eyes boring into him like a dark eclipse, Jake had to make a choice. Would he play the dutiful son, the one who carries the family's burden? Or would he dare to unveil the truth of his unrest? The spectators were experiencing a spotlight moment, their lives woven through his family narrative as they sensed the potential for an emotional outpouring. Jake's internal monologue erupted in vehement protest. Why should he bear the burden of reconciliation? He had worked hard as a nurse, faced daily trials to keep his family solid. And yet, this fractured bond seemed to demand more than just the resounding love he professed. The ache of deferred dreams, the nurse practitioner program lingering just beyond his grasp, throbbed in rhythm with his heartbeat. The ambitious path he once envisioned felt like a fading echo, overshadowed by long-standing family dynamics. Suddenly, he recalled the faces of his patients, the gratitude and trust they bestowed upon him. In those moments, he felt like he truly mattered. Each person treated was a reminder of why he had pursued this career. He wanted to make a difference. But here he stood, battling demons from his past, feeling as though he had neglected his own aspirations for the sake of others, all while standing in front of the very man who had caused much of that neglect. Today is about love, he consciously redirected, glancing at his brother, witnessing genuine happiness that seemed almost unattainable. A flicker of determination ignited within him. He needed to carve a path forward, but would he allow himself to be dragged back into toxic ties? Jake took a breath, steeling himself to confront the specter of his father, the pain he held so tightly. And then he saw it, the briefest grimace on his father's face. Perhaps even he felt the weight of the moment. Was it guilt? Regret? The harder Jake looked, the clearer it became that ignoring this critical moment would mean losing part of himself to indifference. But to confront him meant risking more than just words. It required laying his heart bare. "Dad," he said, the single word hanging in the air, heavy with unsaid feelings. A ripple went through the crowd as they leaned closer, sensing the unraveling knot of tension. "I need you to understand what your absence meant, to me, to us." Each word grew stronger, propelled by years of anguish and introspection. "I loved my brother. I loved this family, but your departure broke me." His father didn't respond immediately, eyes now reflecting something deeper, defensiveness perhaps, or maybe the essence of fear. Jake forced himself to maintain the eye contact, refusing to let his father disengage from this pivotal moment. He was alive in this moment, fueled by a resolve he hadn't known existed within him. In an eruption of fervor, Jake's heart raced as the revelation of his feelings began to surface. He was awakening an unrecognized strength, the nurse within, a healer forging his own agreements with the fractured past. The crowd was still, collectively pulsing with the energy of the confrontation. This was not just a confrontation, it was a decision. But just as clarity dawned, illuminating choices ahead, another unsettling thought crept in. What if he let the fear of the past hold him hostage once more? What if this was the moment that decided not just the course of an evening, but his future as well? The tension swelled to a crescendo, and as Jake inhaled to continue, he came to a profound realization. This moment was not only about healing his family, it was about choosing who he would be going forward. The next steps he took could not just be for others, they had to reflect his own path. As words tumbled from his lips, fueled by a growing urgency, Jake understood the layers that lay ahead. His identity as a son, as a brother, and as a nurse clashing but also intersecting. The moment of truth was pressing, and the choice became stark: transform or remain tethered to the past. Would he find the courage to pursue his dreams, even if it meant ruffling feathers in his family? The path unfolded before him, but the final decision hung suspended like a tightrope waiting for someone to take that first step. The choice was now, and Jake braced himself for the journey that lay ahead. Jake felt the weight of the room shift as he gazed at his father's face, now a canvas painted with a complex mixture of emotions. It was a moment that held promises and potentials, a rift that could either deepen or mend. The urgency of the crowd eked out hushed breaths, each person aware that an unraveling was at hand. The choice was his, and Jake's mind raced through the implications of every word he had spoken, each stone cast onto the already fragile surface of their relationship. Could he tip the scale towards healing without sacrificing his own aspirations? Was it possible to find resolution without relinquishing his desire to chart his own course? "Dad," he said again, more firmly this time, as though trying to penetrate the wall of silence that surrounded them. "If we are to move forward as a family, you need to understand that your absence was more than just a choice. It was a wound that shaped who I am." A ripple of understanding, or perhaps discomfort, flickered in his father's eyes. Was this the moment of reckoning? The knot in Jake's stomach tightened, knowing he was swimming against a current of pain and misunderstanding that had long defined their relationship. Yet within that discomfort lay something powerful, the chance to reclaim his narrative. As he turned his gaze away from his father and scanned the faces of the crowd, he sought validation from the people who had watched him grow. He longed for their support while simultaneously feeling the pull of their curiosity. Each face was an echo of his dedication and struggles, reminding him of the life he built outside the confines of his familial obligations. Jake needed to make a decision, one that could not merely echo the past, but instead redefine it. The nursing profession had taught him the value of resilience, to confront problems head-on rather than back away into silence. This moment was no different. He had to apply that very lesson to his life. "Being a nurse isn't just my career," he continued, voice steadying with resolve. "It's a part of who I am. I faced loss, uncertainty, countless lives depending on me. And yet here I am, a part of this family that feels burdened by our history. But I refuse to carry the weight alone." He could feel the tension crackle in the air, hear the murmurs of surprise and sympathy ripple through the guests. The vulnerable honesty of his words seemed to draw them in, as if suddenly they were all allies in a shared unraveling of painful truths. Jake felt liberated, as if stepping onto new terrain. Yet deep inside, an unsettling thought lurked. What if this honesty alienated him further from his family? What if pursuing his dreams beyond this moment meant carving painful divisions? Each question surged forward, challenging his burgeoning sense of self-worth. He stole another glance at his father, searching for a hint of a response, something that showed he had been heard. Instead, he found only the stubborn silence that had long been their common language. Frustration bubbled beneath the surface, threatening to spill over. Increasingly, Jake recognized that this wasn't just about healing family wounds. It was about claiming his pursuit of happiness and asserting his identity. The mantra resounded in his mind: choose yourself first. A power surged through him, fueled by the dual roles he sought to reconcile: the dutiful son and the aspiring nurse practitioner. He needed to map this collision of identities into something that didn't require sacrificing one for the other. With renewed determination, Jake demanded, "I need to know, do you want to work towards healing this, or is our past all that we can ever be?" This raw question hung in the air, electrifying and challenging, throwing the ball squarely into his father's court. The crowd held its breath as the momentum of Jake's fate hung in the balance. Time seemed to stand still as Jake awaited an answer that felt like both a grave threat and a glimmer of hope. Would his father embrace this opportunity for reconciliation and release, or would Jake be left standing alone, at last ready to choose himself over the past? In that charged silence, Jake could sense his next steps would hold the weight of his future, a dual promise of self-discovery and transformation. Would he walk away from this tangled history, or would he stake his claim on who he could become in the aftermath of truth? The answer loomed, a vital pulse in the silence. Jake's heart thudded in his chest, a mixture of anticipation and dread as he locked eyes with his father. It was a moment that felt suspended in time, yet the voices in the room persisted like an irritating buzz in the background. Each passing second weighed heavier than the last, the pressure mounting, ready to explode.
His father remained silent, his expression unreadable, as the air thickened with Jake's unspoken fears. A myriad of emotions swirled within him: anger, disappointment, and a muffled yearning for connection. He had laid bare his heart moments before, yet there he stood, unacknowledged, on the precipice of vulnerability. Petulance surged within him. Why was acknowledgement so elusive? Had their years of estrangement completely dismantled his father's ability to listen, to empathize? The question echoed like a relentless drum in his mind, forcing him to confront the truth of their relationship. It was a cycle of silence perpetuated by fear and disappointment, and he too harbored an urge to retreat. Yet retreat was no longer an option. It was time for confrontation, not just with his father, but with the narratives that had defined his existence. Taking a deep breath to ground himself, Jake redirected his attention to his own ambitions. The nurse practitioner program loomed large in his life, a beacon of hope and aspiration. In seizing this moment, he re-examined his choices, seeking clarity. What if this confrontation could pave the way for personal growth? If he could accentuate that moment at the wedding as a step toward healing, perhaps it could soften the burden of their past. Jake focused on the fear that loomed within and fought to morph it into determination. "Look," he said more softly, yet full of conviction, "I know our history is complex, but to heal, I need to understand your perspective too. Whether we agree or disagree, this dialogue is our opportunity to redefine ourselves. I need my father in my life, but I also need to live authentically." The room seemed to collectively hold its breath, waiting for his father's reaction. Jake's pulse raced. He had laid it all on the line, realigning his focus on an honest dialogue rather than a last-ditch plea for validation. It was another test of his character, reinforcing the man he was becoming, undeterred by the silence of years. At that moment, a flicker of awareness crossed his father's face. Was it recognition, regret, an acknowledgement of the chasm between them that perhaps could bridge? Jake craved an answer, yet felt prepared for whatever reaction awaited him. While the crowd still leaned in, Jake's thoughts drifted momentarily to the nursing field, the moments when he had faced patients teetering between life and death, where open communication was a fragile necessity. This was a different kind of emergency, one where he faced a relationship's potential demise if he didn't act decisively. What if this moment marked a transformative shift? The tension began to morph into a sense of agency. He would emerge from this tangled web of familial tension stronger, whether it meant stepping away or moving toward connection. Jake dared to imagine a pathway leading to reconciliation. "If you can commit to working on this," he pressed gently, "so can I. But I can no longer abide by silence as our only common ground." The silence that followed was both deafening and full of promise. Jake shifted his weight, embodying an aura of readiness that felt almost tangible, a magnetic force that drew the room into his orbit. Would this conversation flourish into the kind of exchange he had envisioned, or would it collapse under the weight of unaddressed fears? As Jake anticipated an answer, clarity struck him anew. For every step he took towards courage, he might create space for his father to do the same. The significance of this moment blossomed before him, a fork in the road where he would either witness transformation or cement an unfortunate cycle of estrangement. Just as he braced for a response, suddenly a voice broke through the silence. His mother's muffled sobs filled the air, cascading into the charged atmosphere and shifting the room's energy. Was this a sign of solidarity or an omen of looming chaos? The stakes had escalated, but they needed to embrace whatever unfolded next, fortified by the possibility of change, or by the painful acknowledgement of what they could not become. And just then, with the tension palpable and breath held in anticipation, a revelation struck Jake. The precarious nature of truth often resolves in unexpected ways. Was he prepared to face the ramifications, what might bring? The air crackled with tension as Jake registered the impact of his mother's sobs, an intrusion that sliced through the suffocating silence. Distraction morphed into urgency. Their delicate moment teetered on the precipice of collapse. He glanced at his father, unable to gauge whether his expression reflected sadness or irritation. Simultaneously, he felt pressure mounting within him, a cerebral cocktail of anxiety and resolve clenching his gut. Jake inhaled deeply, recognizing that his journey toward healing wasn't solely about validation. This moment was about shared accountability, a commitment to confront not just his father's silence, but the unspoken complexities of their family dynamic. He sensed his mother's grief was the mirror reflecting decades of unresolved pain. In that instant, he resolved to keep the conversation alive, no matter the cost. Turning slightly, Jake found himself facing both parents, their contrasting emotions a battleground of years gone by. "Mom, it's okay to feel," he softened his tone, wanting her presence to channel his own tension. "This is why we're here, why I need to be here." To his surprise, Jake felt his resolve shift from confrontational to inviting. He was inching toward a place of concern rather than lingering solely in despair. Perhaps his desire to seek reconciliation extended beyond just his father. It encapsulated a yearning for familial coherence. He was a heartbeat away from welcoming discomfort as a necessary component of growth. Swallowing deeply, Jake addressed his father again. "What do you want our family to be? What do we need to do to bridge this gap?" The words hung in the air like a prayer, a challenge he cast out into the murky waters of their past. As anticipated, his father's face remained inscrutable, but Jake had entered uncharted territory. He felt emboldened. This was not just his father's decision. In engaging, nailing down the truth, he could establish a foundation on which to build. Suddenly, his mother's sobs began to quiet, replaced by a shaky breath. "This is too much," she murmured, but the struggle in her voice was telling. Jake sensed she wanted to assist but didn't quite know how. She was the peacemaker by nature, yet this was a conflict riddled with complexities that refused to settle. Jake leaned into that struggle, his voice low but insistent. "We've all been avoiding this, and I think it's time we change that. We can't keep pretending familial bonds don't have to be forged through hard work." His determination surged, a newfound clarity illuminating his mission. The undeniable truth was that their collective silence was killing them. With every word, he envisioned the relationships within the family pooling together, raw yet transformative. In the medical training that beckoned him, he had learned how to mend a body, but now committed to healing the heart, their hearts. Would his father reciprocate? Could they all stand together, facing the turbulent waters that had long kept them upstream from genuine connection? Slowly, Jake noticed something shift within himself as well. For the first time, rather than merely seeking his father's approval, he felt a sense of ownership for what lay ahead. He had broken free from the chains of expectation that had undoubtedly bound them both for far too long. Just as hope began to swell, a realization struck. This was about more than just his father. Jake was standing at the threshold of something monumental, a fierce reclamation of not only his paternal bond, but also of his own narrative. He was prepared to navigate through the thicket of their shared history, to create a future led by honesty rather than evasions. Yet, just as he felt ready to leap forward, his father's eyes flickered back to life, the emotional barricade holding tight against the tide. A faint remembrance played across his face, leaving Jake on the edge of understanding and desperation alike. It was a precarious tightrope, and neither of them had taken the first step. In that dizzying moment, Jake grasped the weight of what lay ahead. Was he prepared to challenge the fabric of their family's foundation, transcending the very silence that had defined their lives? As he met his father's gaze, a sense of urgency enveloped him. The courage to press onward was at stake, but so were the ghosts of the past. "This is just the beginning," he murmured quietly, steeling himself for whatever revelation may follow, ever aware of the boundaries that remained yet to be crossed. Jake's words hung in the air, the wake of each syllable amplifying the silence surrounding them. His heart raced, unsure if it was from trepidation or the thrill of daring to challenge the boundaries they had all become accustomed to. There was a flicker in his father's eyes, a shadow of something familiar, yet it seemed to frighten him, as if the walls he had built were finally showing signs of fissure. "Why are you doing this, Jake?" His father's voice, though low, struck through the quiet like a bolt of lightning. "You don't have to carry this burden." Uncertainty gripped him. Why was he doing this? In truth, he was tired. Tired of feeling invisible. Tired of bending to expectations that suffocated him. "I want us to be better," Jake replied, striving for clarity. "It's hard enough as it is without pretending everything is fine." His mother, who had transitioned from tears to a hush of contemplation, nodded. Yet her sorrow was palpable. "Sweetheart, it's difficult to confront the past. You don't know what might come of it." "Exactly. I know it's difficult, but avoiding it only piles more on." Each word was a step off a cliff, a gamble with unknown consequences. In the harsh light of their living room, he felt the raw myth of his truth. He studied his father's expression. The fissures he had seen earlier were beginning to deepen, hints of vulnerability slipping through the cracks. "Dad, I can't keep pretending things are fine with you or us. We need to face this together if we want to move on." Jake's father inhaled sharply, processing his son's words. It was the first time he had dared to venture into the realm of their family dynamics so openly. He felt a surge of hope, yet despair threatened, flickering doubt about whether this fragile moment could shatter or blossom. Finally, his father leaned forward, a guarded inquiry in his eyes. "What makes you think I even know how to be a better father?" The question hung there, potent and raw. Jake felt a momentary chill, the discomfort of confronting their shared failures. The time for reticence was over. "Because I think you want to be. I believe you want to learn how." To his amazement, he saw the economy of his father's wrestle, one that encapsulated the contradiction of wanting connection while fearing the inherent messiness of a relationship. It mirrored his own fears. "I'm messed up, Jake," his father emitted, almost as if he were relenting, the weight of his past pressing heavily against him. "I didn't want to. I thought staying quiet was the best way to protect you and your mother." The truth hung like a blade above them. Jake felt a surge of empathy, yet struggled with frustration. "But it hasn't worked, has it? We still feel the wounds, even if we don't talk about them." In that moment, clarity struck Jake like a thunderbolt. They were both caught in a solitary dance of avoidance, spurred by pain and unacknowledged love. He realized he no longer craved just resolution. He hungered for an emotional reckoning, both for himself and his family. "Let's not let silence dictate our future any longer," he urged, emboldened by the newfound conviction blossoming in his heart. He understood he was initiating a transformation not only for them, but also within himself. Jake was no longer merely the emotional anchor of his family. He was a catalyst for change, a force igniting possibilities. As the tension spun tightly, the air crackled with new energy, teetering between the past shadows and a glimmering potential future. Would his father step decisively into this uneasy alliance of honesty, or would he retreat back to complacency? The answer felt extraordinarily vulnerable, and yet achingly necessary. In this delicate equilibrium, Jake's thoughts turned to the road ahead, laden with uncertainty, but sweetened by the promise of real connection. "I want this for us," he breathed, a tangible hope glowing in his chest. With each moment that passed, Jake could sense the gravity of what loomed over them, the past's haunting whispers mingling with the dawning of something distinctly uncharted. The time for resurfacing ghosts was at hand, drawing closer, beckoning them to explore what lay beneath the surface. The stakes felt high, but then again, for the first time in so long, he welcomed the fear that accompanied such intense hope. And like the ever-pressing urge of a wave, he felt a call within himself, a deep calling to continue exploring the turbulent waters of their past. Would they take the plunge, or would the cycle begin anew? The moment felt charged with weighty expectation as Jake prepared for what may come next, knowing it would define not only their futures, but his own.
The stillness of the room seemed to amplify the soft, almost hesitant breath of his father as he finally spoke. "I want to learn, Jake, but how do we start?" Relief washed over him, mixed with fresh waves of uncertainty. It was a monumental leap from silence to willingness, but Jake understood that the journey had only just begun. "We do it together. We talk. We share everything we felt but never said." Each word echoed in his own mind, a testament to the gravity of what lay ahead. The air felt different now, charged with the electricity of possibility. He looked at his mother, her uncertain smile revealing the fragile hope lingering in her heart. "Together," Jake repeated, savoring the taste of the word. It was a promise as much as an action. They spent hours talking, digging through years of unspoken pain, separating it from the shared love that lay buried beneath. Each revelation unearthed a mix of emotions: anger, sadness, relief. Jake grappled with a gnawing fear. What if this process unraveled their family further instead of putting it back together? Yet, with every heart-wrenching detail shared, he also felt an exhilarating sense of liberation. When the conversation hit a lull, Jake found himself standing by the window, gazing out at the shifting shadows of dusk. The family home, once a sanctum of comfort, now felt like a repository of ghosts, visions of the past that haunted them. It struck him that they needed more than just conversations. They needed tangible actions to give their words life. "Can we make it a point to do something together as a family?" he suggested, turning back to them. "Something fun, something to remind us of what we love about each other." He recalled the family camping trips from his childhood, ignited by barbecues and laughter, where the night sky glittered with endless stars and warm memories. His father's face brightened at the idea. "Maybe we could go to that lake we used to visit." The hesitation still lingered, but it was overshadowed by an emerging spark of enthusiasm. The echoes of their shared history flooded the room, bringing warmth to the chilly confines of previously closed hearts. "Yes, that sounds great, Dad." Jake felt the surge of hope swell again. "We could plan a weekend to escape. No phones, just us." He could already visualize the laughter that would replace the tension, the shared memories that would lay new foundations over old wounds. Jake knew this was merely the first step, but it felt monumental. They had traveled from silence to ideas, and now they were on the cusp of action. The letter still loomed, a troubling challenge lying beneath the surface. But now, unified in a common purpose, he felt ready to confront anything that came their way. That night, as Jake fell into a restless sleep, scattered, fragmented images filled his dreams, a spark of laughter, the warmth of a campfire, and a glimpse of his father, unguarded, smiling. But then a shadow flickered in the corner, whispering doubts of failure and despair, questions about whether they could truly change. He awoke the next morning with an uneasy sensation, still grappling with the awareness that past truths could resurface. The letters remained unaddressed, packed away with all their hidden guilt. The next conversation would be critical. He could already sense the nerves rising in his chest, the imminent confrontation of their unresolved issues weighing heavily. But perhaps this was part of it all, the balance between courage and vulnerability. Jake understood now that to embrace change meant facing the old demons squarely in the eye. He could feel the pull of purpose, propelling him once again toward the next challenge of emotional reckoning. What awaited them at the lake could either reinforce their new bond or expose deeper fractures buried within. The clock was ticking, time was of the essence, and he needed to act before the potential of a burgeoning relationship faded under the weight of past regrets. As he prepared mentally for the family trip, he couldn't help but wonder, would the past provide clarity or would it bluff them into retreat?
The thought lingered, and Jake knew he was on the brink of a significant turning point in his life. It was now or never. Would he find the strength to dive into the depths of their shared history, or would they become yet another lost opportunity? The road ahead shimmered with uncertainty, daring him to seize it with both hands. Jake stood by the window, clenching the edges of the sill as a wrestling storm of thoughts coursed through him. Memories churned like heavy clouds, and he wondered if they were really ready to confront the past. The upcoming family trip had the potential to solidify their renewed commitment, yet the fear of unraveling old wounds loomed ominously in the background. The morning of their departure arrived, and with it a rushed excitement surged through the house. His mother flitted from room to room, checking off a mental list of items, while his father struggled to contain a nervous energy. Jake sensed the weight of expectation pressing down on him. He was aware that this journey was as much about reconciliation as it was about forging new memories, yet the shadows of doubt still flickered at the edges of his vision. As they piled into the car, Jake felt hyper-aware of every silence. The tension of unvoiced anxieties thickened the atmosphere, yet he fought to remain optimistic. This trip could redefine their family dynamic, but doing so meant acknowledging everyone's roles in their discontent. Moving through the countryside, Jake felt the rhythmic thud of tires on the pavement, acting as a reminder of the journey they were undertaking, not just to a distant lake, but into the depths of their collective history. He stole glances at his parents. His father was focused on the road, while his mother rested her gaze out the window, her reflection clouded with memories of better days. "Do you remember the first time we went camping?" Jake ventured, trying to break the ice. The question hung in the air, heavy with nostalgia. It was his attempt to anchor their conversations in the warmth of shared history instead of lingering resentments. His father's lips quirked into a tentative smile. "You were only 6, Jake. It was a disaster, but you had the best time." The memory prompted a chuckle from his mother, and warmth began to seep into the somewhat stiff ambience of the vehicle. A wave of determination surged in Jake. They should celebrate these moments, clinging to them as beacons of hope amidst their struggles. But underneath the laughter, unease quivered. Memories could be a double-edged sword, illuminating their past, yet also exposing raw, painful truths. Arriving at the lake, the natural beauty struck him. Trees stood like ancient sentinels around the sparkling water, and the air was infused with a crisp freshness that felt invigorating. But the allure was intermingled with anxiety. The lake represented a chance for healing, yet it also mirrored an unstable depth that they had yet to test. Setting up their tents, Jake felt the need to draw his family together. "Let's try an exercise," he proposed. "Share one thing you truly appreciate about each other." It might seem simplistic on the surface, but he understood it as a means to both honor their past and push through to a brighter future together. His mom smiled softly, but Jake could see the hesitation flickering behind her eyes. His father, typically reserved and cautious, looked contemplative. "Are you sure that's how we want to start?" his father probed, vulnerability beneath his questioning tone. Jake felt the tension escalate. Would they retreat, or would they push forward into this uncharted territory? "Just trust me," Jake urged, urgency creeping into his voice. "Even if it's uncomfortable, it's necessary. We need to breathe a life into the void of the past, and this is the first step." The challenge hung in the air, a palpable pressure, as they began to express their appreciation layer by layer. Each word seemed to stretch into a new space of potential healing, yet Jake braced himself for the moment when the unresolved issues would inevitably surface. But what would happen when the kind words turned to unearthing deeper resentments? More importantly, would they be able to hold the balance between honesty and compassion, revealing their vulnerabilities without succumbing to the pain of their fractured history? As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the lake, Jake felt the pulse of impending revelations in the air. The day had begun simply, yet he could sense that the evening would reshape everything. Would they emerge with a stronger bond, or would the fragile threads of connection fray once again? The air buzzed with expectation, and Jake was ready. Would they have the courage to dive beneath the surface, even if it meant confronting the most profound and haunting aspects of their family dynamic? Jake's heart pounded as the first words of appreciation reverberated among them, the tension dissipating momentarily. His mother began, her voice softened as she voiced gratitude toward his father for always being a source of strength. There was sincerity in her tone that Jake hadn't anticipated. He caught a glimpse of vulnerability in his father's eyes, as if acknowledgement of their shared struggles had stripped away layers of past hurts. Yet, as the words flowed, Jake couldn't shake the impending sense of dread. While kindness filled the space, he felt the shadow of deeper issues lurking just beneath the surface, waiting for the opportunity to surface and disrupt this fragile moment of connection. "Jake, you've always been our sunshine," his mother continued, her eyes lighting up as she looked at him, seeming to reach into the corners of his teenage past when he felt untouchable and invincible. But Jake knew that light had often been dimmed by the weight of expectations and familial pressures. "Thanks, Mom," he managed, but the niggling doubts clawed at him. Did they truly see him, or merely the facade he'd constructed to shield himself from disappointment? When it came to his father's turn, Jake held his breath, fear pulsing in his chest. "Jake," he started slowly, his words deliberate, "I appreciate how you've been trying to bring us together. It's a good initiative, a brave one." Jake sensed a shift in tone, the moment evolving into a vulnerability Jake had rarely seen from his father. In this fragile space, Jake began to recognize the weight of their unspoken burdens. It positioned him between acceptance and an intense desire to dig deeper, to confront the reality that family dinners never seemed to clarify. "Dad," Jake took a leap, feeling the swell of courage pushing him to continue. "There's something I feel we should acknowledge. We can't keep dancing around what happened. If we are going to mend things, shouldn't we talk about the elephant in the room?" His heart raced as he felt the heat of his parents' immediate discomfort wash over him. His mother recoiled slightly, and his father's expression hardened. "What do you mean by that?" his father asked, an edge creeping into his voice, tension resurrecting. Jake forged ahead, his thoughts racing, but his resolve steady. "I mean, we need to address why we've drifted apart. It's about time we let out what we've been holding in. We can't build on sunshine if the storms are still brewing." An uneasy silence fell, one that could shatter with the slightest provocation. His mother's eyes held tears, her emotional defense weakening. Jake could see her weighing the consequences of honesty on their already fragile equilibrium. "We've always had our secrets, haven't we?" he spoke softly, edging closer to the abyss before them. "And every time we push them aside, they fester beneath the surface we pretend is healthy." The tension peaked as their expressions shifted, suddenly hopeful yet frightfully apprehensive. "What are you saying?" his father interjected sharply, a mixture of fear and defiance in his tone. "No more hiding," Jake answered firmly. His mind raced with the possible outcomes. Would this shatter his family, or would it dismantle years of unspoken pain, paving the way for genuine healing? As darkness cloaked the lake, the reflections on the water began to ripple, mirroring his inner turmoil. The call to action pulsed within him, the moment ready to tip either way. The conversation hung precariously, like the branches swaying under the weight of the wind. With one bold move, Jake recognized the chance to either liberate them or drag them back into the depths of denial. In that charged silence, he realized the stakes were devastatingly high. Would he steer them toward the kind of vulnerability that scares yet liberates, or would he retreat now, allowing fear to retake the reins? The atmosphere buzzed with an electrifying urgency, beckoning him to take a stand. But just as he prepared to push forward, a crack of thunder rolled through the night sky, a reminder of the storms that lay ahead. The heightening tension gripped Jake. This was no longer just about sharing gratitude. This was the moment to confront the darkness they had avoided for too long. As he opened his mouth to speak, the wind changed direction, providing an unexpected distraction. Would they listen, or was he about to awaken a tempest far more daunting than he could have anticipated? Jake stood there, heart hammering in his chest, as the rain began to fall in heavy droplets, catching them off guard. Moments after the thunder, the storm unleashed itself upon them. The laughter and warmth of appreciation that had filled the air washed away, replaced by the unyielding reality they had avoided for too long. "Let's move under the trees," he shouted, urgency lacing his voice. But inside, he felt like they were all trapped in the storm of their emotions. They scrambled for cover, bringing the tension along. It was then that amidst the chaotic raindrops hitting the leaves, the weight of Jake's previous words settled heavily in the atmosphere. "Jake, can we discuss this later?" His father's voice sounded wary, a plea for reprieve. But Jake sensed this was the pivotal moment, the turning point they had been so desperately avoiding. "Dad, please, we can't keep running from it," he urged, insistence threading through the storm. "What we've avoided speaking about has been our reality for all these years. If there's any chance of forging a real connection, it must come from honesty, even if it hurts." The storm outside raged, but as he spoke, it mirrored the tempest within each of them. His gaze darted between his parents. He could see the flicker of fear and pain in their eyes. His mother took a step forward, brushing water from her face with a trembling hand. "I want to face it, but what if it breaks us even worse?" In a moment of clarity, Jake understood the cracks that had formed their distance. "Mom, the truth can break us, yes, but it can also help us rebuild something stronger." Jake's voice steadied, allowing the ripple of his courage to resound. Every word was a brick, each revealing moment an opportunity to lay new foundations. If we don't share how we feel, how can we ever heal? As another flash of lightning illuminated their surroundings, he took a deep breath, summoning every ounce of determination. "Let's talk about the past without fear for one night." The rain continued pouring, thickening the air, but he felt like they were standing at the edge of something transformative. "What if we face the letters?" his father finally added, vulnerability creeping into his tone. "What if we made this a night of truth?" Jake's heart swelled at the prospect. "Yes, we can read them together. This has to be a collective experience. We'll face these hurts, and together, we will choose to move forward." Gradually, the storm outside began to lighten, as if reflecting the shift happening within. They huddled beneath the trees, the downpour easing to a gentle patter as Jake reached for the letters he'd brought with him. The pages were soaked but still palpable, tangible remnants of pain and longing they had pushed aside for far too long. As Jake opened the first letter, a sense of weightlessness took over. It was time to confront, to release carried burdens and embrace honesty. With measured breaths, he read through lines of compromised promises, desperation, and heartache. With each word he spoke, the storm dwindled, transforming into a gentle rain of release, a cleansing of sorts. His mother hugged her knees, her eyes glistening as she felt their emotions echoing back at her. "I didn't know you felt that way." Jake paused to glance up, noticing his father's furrowed brow. "Dad, what do you feel?" His father swallowed hard, revealing layers of guilt. "I was scared of hurting you more. I thought staying away was easier than facing the aftermath of my mistakes." The realization felt like a thunderclap of its own. They were all scared. Fear had kept them from love and connection. "But if we're honest, we can start fresh. We can be better," Jake exclaimed, his own resolve becoming clearer. "I want that," his mother replied, tears gliding down her cheeks as she nodded. The air charged around them as acceptance filled the space. They had taken that first brave step into healing, deepening their bond in ways that had previously felt unattainable. Jake turned, meeting his father's gaze. "Let's go beyond this moment, Dad. Let's not just talk tonight. Let's commit to real change. Help me push past these barriers. We have so much potential if we just dare to fuel it. The calm that followed the storm felt
palatable. As they shared, the letters laying bare their fears also opened gateways toward powerful commitments. Hours passed, and for the first time, they embraced their painful legacy rather than dodging it. They envisioned a future forged from vulnerability instead of silence, a commitment not just to clarity and honesty, but to one another. "Tomorrow, I will sign up for that nurse practitioner program," Jake declared, determination settling within him. The declaration echoed like a promise made to himself, to his family. His father nodded, finally showing a glimmer of pride. "And I will be there to support you. We can break the cycle." In that moment of collective resolution, Jake felt a solid confidence build within him. The bond had shifted, and with it, his understanding of family took on new meaning. The future was no longer overshadowed by unresolved pain, but lit by the glow of hope and potential. As they stepped away from the rain-soaked night, they forged not just a new path together, but a personal testament to true change. Jake was resolute, fully manifested in his commitment to his career and family ties, redefined on his own terms. His journey had finally come full circle. The fated dream was brought to life in vibrant, resounding harmony. Now was time for action, and it was official. Jake was ready to thrive. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.